And now, it's time to sit back and enjoy the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Broadcast.
Attention, people of Earth. Do not resist us. All who oppose us shall be annihilated. We command the most powerful army of monsters in the universe. They are sure to defeat your Earth monsters. All those who are hearing this are now under the control of the Earth Destruction Directive.
Hello everyone and welcome to Earth Destruction Directive. I am your host as always, Mr. Luke Giaconetti. I'd like to thank everyone for downloading and listening to our podcast today. And I hope everyone enjoyed our previous episode where we took a look at the Kong of Skull Island 2018 special comic book, which was for hashtag Horror Comics Month in the month of October, and also our special Halloween Gaiden episode featuring Vampire Doll. Now, this is a very special episode of Earth Destruction Directive, and the first reason why it's special is that I am not alone. I am joined by my brother, Mr. Jason Giaconetti. How you doing, Jay?
Hey, folks, how we doing?
Good to have you on, as always. Now, the second reason why this is special is this is, believe it or not, this is episode 100 of Earth Destruction Directive. That's right, the big 100 of EDD. So thank you to everyone who has supported the show as we've made it out here. Now, I know what you're saying, Luke. You've released more than 100 episodes. Yeah, but I count the Gaidens separately. So that's why we crossed the 100 individual drops a couple of years back, but this is in fact episode 100. And so I had to have my brother on for episode 100. And for that, we are actually going to look back. Not just back in time to our topic for today, but back in time to a film we've already covered here on Earth Destruction Directive. If you set your Wayback Machine all the way back to the year 2011, and you look at episode 6 of Earth Destruction Directive, I covered this film, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from 1974. At the time, I was experimenting with randomly generating which Godzilla movie to cover so they weren't being covered in order. I quickly abandoned that and started covering them in order like a normal person, relatively normal person anyway. And so after we did Godzilla vs. Megalon with my friend Joe, the next one in line, of course, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and I said, well, let me get my brother and we can talk about this one together rather than me doing just a straight episode with it. We'll get a discussion over this one. So Jay, what do you? I know you are a Mechagodzilla fan, but not necessarily of this movie. What's your background with Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 74?
So I'm going to say you and I had to have seen this when we were kids at some point, because I remember King Caesar. And to be honest with you, my memory of this movie is we didn't see this at home. I want to say we were at Disney World. We had just gotten to the Polynesian. We just driven down. We got to the Polynesian. We're in the room, and mom and dad are getting whatever. We're going to go to the pool. It's just got the Polynesian back in the day had the absolute best pool.
Oh, absolutely.
And we put on the Channel 5 or whatever the heck, whatever the thing was that, and we caught this because I remember King Caesar. That's really what sticks out in my memory about this movie. But I don't remember seeing the whole movie. We just saw some of it, then we went to the pool. Right? I think we saw basically the end, which is as a kid, you're like, okay, great, no story, we're good, kind of thing. And then I don't remember seeing this movie all the way through. I don't know. I mean, I know I had, because nothing was surprising here, but I don't remember when that would be. Because this is not one of the regular rotations. This wasn't Godzilla vs. Megalon. This wasn't Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. It wasn't Rodan. It was, what I'm saying? It wasn't one of the regular rotation movies. So I think I'm trying to remember. I don't really remember anything else where we ever would have seen it, though. But you might remember better than I would, because dates things were released. Yeah.
So, well, the thing is, I agree with you. This was not on the regular rotation that either Channel 5 or Channel 11 would show of the Godzilla films. That's WNYW and WPIX in New York. Terror of Mechagodzilla, we saw a lot because that one was on a lot, and we had that one on tape very early. So that one we saw quite a bit, but I don't recall seeing Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla all the way through until I got the commercial tape when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
where that was when it was for Christmas one year. I think I got Godzilla vs. Megalon, Godzilla vs. Gigan, and I think Godzilla's Revenge, all on tape, because those are the ones I didn't have on tape that were still commercially available at that point. And that's why I said this to Nathan. I always associate Godzilla vs. Gigan with Christmas time for that reason, oddly enough.
Yeah.
But so yeah, this was another one. I mean, obviously I knew Mechagodzilla, and I knew Terror Mechagodzilla, but this one was so elusive because it just, like I said, was never on. I don't recall this ever being on like Super Scary Saturdays on TBS with Grandpa, whereas other Godzilla movies were. So yeah, this one was always one I remember reading about, and a lot of people really liking when I was reading books about it. And then I saw it and I was like, wow, that's not as good as Terror Mechagodzilla. That's always been kind of my takeaway. When I was younger, it's like, well, Terror Mechagodzilla is way better than this. So I was kind of eager to do a rewatch to really, to give it a fair shake again and try it and see where we go. So yeah, that's what I said. There are some that I've seen them all a bunch of times at this point, but there are some that obviously saw a lot more just because we had access to them as kids. You mentioned Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
Yeah.
That movie, it never gets old. I love Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monsters.
Well, the thing is that probably when you got this on tape it was Christmas break, so we're not going anywhere. And outside of like basketball season, which we both were, in the middle of, there wasn't a ton to do. I mean, okay, I'm not saying we had nothing to do, ladies and gentlemen. Don't all get up your panties in a bunch, kind of thing, right? Yeah. Like we definitely had Sega Genesis to play and things like that, but like it was not unheard of for Luke and I to gasp, "Oh no!" watch a movie together. Yeah. And we probably watched this. You're probably like, "Oh, sweet, we have it." And that's probably the last time I saw it all the way through until we rewatched it for this, which is about par for the course, because I'm trying to think, as somebody who now owns the Criterions and all the Blu-rays and all the stuff, right? Whatever. I don't remember. Was this ever available like on DVD? It must have been, right?
Yes. So this is one of those TriStar DVD releases.
I have it. Yeah, I do.
You've got it. And that's the one that's out of print that before the Criterion was going for usually north of $75 online.
Yes. I remember now.
Yeah, those prices have come down a little bit, but not much. And it never got re-released. Like TriStar did, for example, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster and Godzilla versus Gigan, and then Kraken would later pick those up and re-release them on DVD. This one never got re-released. This one and Son of Godzilla is the other one that those TriStar DVDs. Yeah, they go for a pretty good amount nowadays. Now you can just, No, I'm
just saying because now, because I remember when they came out, saying, because I had it with DVD, so it was already in the mid '90s. I probably was.
I think it was the early 2000s. I want to say late '90s, early 2000s.
Right.
Time.
So it's when I'm in college or just out of college, and I would go to Best Buy every Tuesday and just scour the new releases and the horror section, some of that. And the thing is, knowing how hard it was to get certain Godzilla movies when new ones came out, I pretty much was like, I'm buying them. It's worth the $10. I'm just going to buy it. It's $10. I'm buying it because we just didn't have access to things. See, the problem is nowadays, Luke, you know as well as I do, people are like, what do you mean you don't have access? Like this movie's, you can watch this movie on HBO Max right now.
Yes.
Like, okay. Like there was no HBO Max. There was no streaming. You know what streaming was? It was where fish lived. Like literally, that's what streaming is. So, the key is, I think sometimes people kind of forget, and I don't mean to be mean like that, but some people kind of forget that things weren't available as much back then. So having a good home video library, VHS, DVDs, whatever, was very important. And most people did not go into that. Obviously Dad was an early adopter of VHS and kind of set us up to be adopters of VHS, Blu-ray, DVD, whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love having the physical disc of things. I mean, that's why the Criterion collection came out. Not to get us too far afield, that Criterion collection is beautiful.
Yeah,
it is beautiful. And as a physical collector, I'm like, oh my God, look at this thing. There's a book, there's discs. I mean, I don't love that the discs are in sleeves. They're not like,
I was going to say, store that one laying down. Don't store that one standing up, folks.
Yeah. So, but that's part of the problem is like, that aside, but it's like a collector but just to have them available in the Criterion, they're not going to look better than this.
No, they're not going to ever look better than that. Exactly.
It's just like the Gamera set that came out that they've now.
That Gamera set from Arrow, that is, let's put it this way. The Godzilla movies, whether they were, they were definitely A budget pictures for the most part.
Sure.
the Gamera films, they might have been A-budget pictures for Dai. That was not an A-budget for over at Toho. And those films, seeing them look that clear on that Arrow, it's a little weird, you know? It's a little weird, at least for the Showa ones. I mean, obviously the Heisei ones and all that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right. So I'm just going to say this, and again, I don't want to anger anybody, but this is true. As much as I love the Criterion Godzillas, the way they look, and don't get me wrong, that's awesome. I think I love the Arrow release of the Gamera movies as a set more because of how much love they're giving B movies. And I do have an affinity for B movies. Just saying.
No, I know that. I'll be honest with you.
They're both amazing, though. They're both absolutely amazing.
I think in the main, and this is going to sound stupid, in the mainstream, like in actual like mainstream, that Criterion Godzilla got a ton of press and a ton of hype because Godzilla is mainstream. Gamera is not, but inside like the fandom, that Arrow Gamera set, that was beloved. There's a reason why that sold out as quickly as it did.
Yeah.
So
as it is, they eventually cut that up into 3 separate releases. Right. I think, and those releases themselves are not cheap because the demand is through the roof, and Arrow can only make them. And isn't that crazy though? People are like, well, who would want Gamera? Well, clearly people want Gamera.
Yeah, people want Gamera. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, let's talk about Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla.
Absolutely. Now, so Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, the Japanese title is Gojira Tai Mechagodzilla, was released to Japanese theaters by Toho on March 21st, 1974. Now, as a note, this is the 20th anniversary film of the Godzilla series, 74, 54. The movie made its way over to the United States a few years later, 1977, released by Cinema Shares. Now, Cinema Shares had previously released Godzilla vs. Gigan as Godzilla on Monster Island and Godzilla vs. Megalon, famously released both of those here in the U.S. And then they put this movie out under the title Godzilla vs. the Bionic Monster. Now, this led to the threat from Universal Pictures that they were going to sue Cinema Shares, claiming that the title was too similar to their show, The $6 Million Man, and of course its spinoff, The Bionic Woman. So Cinema Shares, knowing that they could not afford that, simply retitled the film Godzilla vs. the Cosmic Monster, which the film was actually pretty much commonly known as Godzilla vs. the Cosmic Monster here in the U.S. until the film came out on home video, I want to say in like 1988, under the title Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and it's used that title ever since. So let's get into the crew a little bit here. Our director is Jun Fukuda. Many people kind of know Jun as the other Godzilla director. This was Fukuda's final effort in the Godzilla series. Previously, he directed Ibra Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Gigan, and Godzilla vs. Megalon. And we'll see he also got a hand in the screenplay as well. Our story has 2 credits. The first is Shinichi Sekizawa, who wrote many, many science fiction films for Toho. Most of the Godzilla series is Sekizawa. You know, a lot of his tropes that he put into the films, especially in the 60s, will become kind of the recurring tropes of the genre because he used them so often. The other credit for story on this goes to Masami Fukushima. And I did not have any background on Fukushima, so I looked it up. He was a science fiction author and editor. In fact, he was the editor of SF Magazine, which was one of the first and probably the most prestigious science fiction magazine in Japan. Yeah. So he was a hard science fiction writer that got together with Sekizawa. I wonder if maybe it was just a concept, because on Godzilla vs. Megalon, Sekizawa gets a story credit, and all he did basically was say, "Oh, Godzilla fights an undersea kingdom." You know, so I wonder if maybe they're like, "Hey, Godzilla fights a robot" or something like that. You know,
I don't know. I don't. That's. But I'll be honest with you. It's really cool though that they got somebody who is that, like, kind of well known in the science fiction community, kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. So the screenplay credit, as I said, Jun Fukuda gets a credit as helping to do the screenplay. A similar situation with Megalon, where from the story by Sekizawa, Fukuda helped flesh it out. And then the other credit goes to Hiroyasu Yamamura. And Yamamura's credits, a lot of it is Tokusatsu TV. He has credits on shows including Ultra Q, Ultra 7, Mirror Man, the anime Galaxy Express 999, and one of my favorites, Dinosaur War Eisenborg, which is actually a mix of anime and tokusatsu, and it is insane.
It sounds crazy.
Yeah. The music is by Masaru Sato, who, again, kind of the other one. If it didn't get Akira Ifukube, you got Masaru Sato. He did the soundtrack to Godzilla Raids Again, Half Human, The H-Man, Ibra Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, also Submersion of Japan, the very well-regarded disaster film. Our director of special effects is Teruyoshi Nakano, who had been running the effects for quite a while at this point, starting in, I think he was first credited as the full director of special effects in 1971 with Smog Monster, but he had been around for a while. Interesting, his assistant, the assistant director of special effects, Koichi Kawakita. Now, Kawakita would go on to be the special effects guy in the 80s and 90s, and in fact would be the full director of special effects in 1993 for the Heisei version of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. So I thought that was pretty cool. And finally, our producer, Tomoyuki Tanaka, legendary producer at Toho, going all the way back to the earliest days of the Showa period, all the way through the Heisei era until he passed away. Always had a hand in Godzilla, and obviously a very familiar name to Godzilla fans. Now, the cast, we got a few new faces and a few returning faces here, which I thought was pretty interesting. So Keisuke, that's played by Masaki Daimon. That is our hero. He is probably best known. He was in the Chanbara Lady Snowblood, which that actually got released over here in the U.S., I think, at some point. So that's probably what he's best known for besides this. He is the captain on Ultraman 80. And like a lot of people in this movie, comes back in Terror of Mechagodzilla playing a different character.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
That does happen.
Under contract, right? So
yeah.
So Masahiko, who is Keisuke's brother, played by Kazuoya Oyama. He played the titular hero on Zone Fighter, which was Toho's Giant Hero series. Famously co-starred Godzilla in a few episodes, and Zone Fighter fought Gigan and King Ghidorah. He also appeared in the disaster film Conflagration, which is one of that cycle that Toho was doing in the 70s, along with Submersion Japan and Deathquake and Prophecies of Nostradamus. Seiko, who is our archaeologist, she is played by Reiko Tajima. She has a ton of Japanese TV credits, both face acting and voice acting, still working today, still had credits in 2020 and 2021 on IMDb, so very prolific actress in Japan. Kuronoma, who is the leader of the Black Hole Aliens, he is played by Goro Mitsumi. This was the funniest credit. He had a few credits, mostly playing, villains. Seemed to appear a lot more gangster type movies and science fiction. He does have a credit in the Japanese version of War of the Gargantuas. He dubbed the voice of Russ Tamblyn in the Japanese version of War of the Gargantuas.
That is a weird credit.
Yeah, and Russ Tamblyn, he can sit on it and rotate, because if you ever hear the story about what Russ Tamblyn did with the making of that film, and then when he had to go and redub his voice, it's like, I am sure that Mitsumi was a much more appealing leading man than Russ Tamblyn. Now, amusingly, I said that several of the actors here reappear in Terror of Mechagodzilla. Mitsumi plays the big bad in Terror of Mechagodzilla as well, but it's a different character.
This is funny. That's just
he
crazy.
He looks almost exactly the same, but plays a different character.
I guess that's why I remember Terror of Mechagodzilla, and I kind of thought there was this movie for. To be honest, I remember Terror of Mechagodzilla, seeing it a bunch, but I kind of didn't kind of look at it and go, why don't I remember this better? Because a lot of it looked the same. So
yeah, a lot of the same people. Maybe that's just like the criteria for being a leader of the Black Hole Aliens. You got to look like this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Nanbara, who we find out is our Interpol detective. We'll talk about that. That's Shin Kishida. And Shin Kishida appeared in Lake of Dracula and Evil of Dracula, also on several Tsuburaya TV shows. Now, as I mentioned, there are some classic Toho stars that have small roles in this film, and I thought that was really quite cool, because a lot of these folks, we weren't seeing them as much by this point in the 70s. But Akihiko Harada, who plays Professor Miyajima, longtime Toho stalwart, all the way back to 1954, where he played Dr. Serizawa. Also, of course, appeared in Rodan, Mothra, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah, Ibra Horror of the Deep. He appears on Ultraman. Appeared on a lot of different stuff. A lot of if you watch any tokusatsu from the Showa period, you know Akihiko Harada. Similarly, Hiroshi Koizumi, who plays the other professor, Professor Wakura, also very well known to Godzilla fans. Probably most famously, he's in Mothra and Mothra vs. Godzilla, where he plays two Professor Murais who are not the same guy. But also appeared in Godzilla Raids Again. He was in Matango, Atragon, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and some other films as well. Kenji Sahara has a very small role. He is the captain of the Coral Queen of the cruise ship. And best known to me, and probably most Godzilla fans, he is Shigeru from Rodan.
Oh, yeah.
So again, you'll recognize his face for sure. Also appeared in the Mysterians. He was in Mothra, the H-Man. Again, King Kong vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Atragon, and then both Frankenstein Conquers the World and War of the Gargantuas, and also in Destroy All Monsters and several other credits as well. So very cool to see three longtime Toho players get small roles here. Now for our suit actors, Godzilla is played by Isao Zushi, and Zushi had played Godzilla and some of the enemy monsters, including both Gigan and King Ghidorah on Zone Fighter. So he had some experience playing Godzilla before stepping into the role here. And Mechagodzilla is Kazunari Mori. Now, Kazunari Mori had worked on the show Jumborg Ace, which is a Subaraya show. Most people now kind of know that for some of the characters that have not necessarily been recycled from Jumborg Ace, but modern Ultra characters are based on those old characters, like Gene Bot and Gene 9. He would also go on to play Mechagodzilla in Terra Mechagodzilla, which was got to repeat the role. And then King Caesar and Anguirus are both played by Kenichi Kasumi. Of course, those characters don't appear on screen together. Kasumi appeared in various Subaraya shows, but best known, he played Zone Fighter on Zone Fighter. So we've got Kazuya Aoyama, who was like the human form of Zone Fighter, and then Kenichi Kasumi, who played Zone Fighter. So, you had Kasumi and Zushi, who had worked together on Zone Fighter as Godzilla and Anguirus and King Caesar. So, they had some working together. I don't know. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't find this credit that when the fake Godzilla is fighting Anguirus, that is Zushi in the suit, because it's the regular Godzilla suit. But then the fake Godzilla is played by Mori when he fights Godzilla, when it's Godzilla versus fake Godzilla. So I couldn't find any details on that, but I believe that is the case. There's a couple of Godzillas running around in this movie, so you got to keep things straight.
Yeah. Well, I found some, I don't think we need to put it here, something about the original concepts and stuff from the script. I don't know if you want to talk about. So it said the concept of Mechagodzilla and King Caesar were not in the original first draft of the movie. This kind of stuff. I'm assuming you heard this before. Yeah. The film was originally. Yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead and let's hear it. Yeah.
The film was originally titled "Giant Monsters Converge on Okinawa Showdown in," oh my gosh, Zampaniski. I probably said that wrong. It would feature Mothra, Anguirus, and a new alien called Garugon. Toho had been pining to use Okinawa in the film since the obtained permission to borrow Godzilla. When Subaraya Productions obtained permission from Toho to borrow Godzilla to film the film called Godzilla vs. Red Moon, which was never made. Yes. As for the showdown in Zampaniski script, Mothra was eventually dropped in favor of a character named King Barugon, which would eventually evolve into King Caesar. Garugon was then dropped in favor of robotic Godzilla. King Caesar's origin as a guardian monster was may also have had roots in Okinawa mythology that was aborted for the movie Godzilla vs. Space Monster, the Earth Defense Command script, from which the movie was eventually turned into. And this is all in Japanese, so I don't know it. Whatever came out. Oh, it's Godzilla versus Gigan, 72. Yeah.
So Nathan and I talked about this, that there were several scripts commissioned for what eventually became Godzilla versus Gigan, and Earth Defense Directive and Earth Destruction Directive were both titles from those. So Yeah, that a lot of those ideas were kicking around. I mean, Megalon is in an early version of one of these scripts for, I don't know if it was Return of King Ghidorah or one of the scripts that became Godzilla versus Gigan. So a lot of those ideas, they never really went away. They just kind of hung around. It's like, well, can we use this? Can we rejigger this a little bit to make it work?
Right. I just thought it was interesting because I remember you guys talking about some of this stuff, but I was like, oh man, it ties in here too. Not even thinking about the fact that, of course, it would tie in here. It makes perfect sense to tie in here. You know what I'm saying? Because of when it's actually occurring.
Yeah. And the main thing that I always found was interesting is that really the driver was to set it in Okinawa.
Yep.
And the Okinawan setting is very unique in this film, and they do use it to good effect, I think. So it was very that I thought was that survived is not really surprising. Is that as a through line for the story that'll work no matter how you're doing it. You have the invasion and the guardian monster and all that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it works really well. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. I just didn't even think about tying those two things together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I didn't,
absolutely.
But
yeah. So our synopsis, I took the synopsis from Wikipedia. So we'll go through and we'll just stop and talk our way through our film here. So our story goes a little something like this. In Okinawa, an Azumi priestess has a vision of a city being destroyed by a giant monster. All right, we'll stop right there. First off, we have to say the jazz soundtrack of this film is astounding. I love the jazz soundtrack. Sato goes just completely in a different direction from what had been done previously, to the point that when this is brought back in Final Wars, I stood up and applauded the first time I saw that scene in Final Wars where they started playing this, where the guy was listening to it as a jazz record.
Right. Yeah. So
really great soundtrack here. We see Anguirus right at the beginning because we have to have a monster because of the kids. Hey kids, monster movie, monster up front. Here's Anguirus. And I didn't watch this one with the kids, but I guarantee you they would be excited because they all love Anguirus.
Yeah. Oh well, Anguirus he's a top guy. He doesn't appear very much, but he's a top guy.
Yeah. He's like he's like the Lex Luger. He's Godzilla's friend.
Yes.
So.
Oh man.
Yeah. And so so we get the vision of destruction that the priestess has. Okay. And what's really strange about this is that, so this is stock footage that is overlaid. It's from like some of I think it's from the last war. A lot of destruction stock footage ends up from the last war, but King Ghidorah is clear in her vision. Mm-hmm. And King Ghidorah does not appear in this film. He's not referenced. He's not named anywhere in this film. So I am kind of at a loss why you would put King Ghidorah there. The only, and this is by no means, should be taken as anything other than pure conjecture on my point, is that she has a vision of a monster coming and destroying the Earth, and it's an alien monster. It's an invader from outer space. So King Ghidorah is an alien from outer space. So's, Mechagodzilla. So theoretically, maybe the vision is filling in something that she knows as a monster from outer space, I guess.
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I was obviously the other thing you could think is like, well, maybe, not that it happens anywhere else, but it obviously happened before. So it's a memory.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah. But, we know something bad is coming. So we get a little cameo from King Ghidorah, which is always appreciated. Meanwhile, Masahiko Shimizu discovers a type of metal not found on Earth while spelunking and takes it to Professor Miyajima for an examination. An excavation led by Masahiko's brother Keisuke uncovers a chamber filled with ancient artifacts and a mural bearing the ominous prophecy. When a black mountain appears above the clouds, a huge monster will arise and try to destroy the world. But when the red moon sets and the sun rises in the west, 2 monsters shall appear to save the people. So we get the first appearance here of Space Titanium.
Yes.
Which I love Space Titanium. If it's a metal not of this Earth, I'm not sure exactly how we know that it's Space Titanium. But I guess that's okay. I guess we'll just kind of roll with that a little bit. You know,
but isn't that kind of like in Italy when they make a spaghetti western? There's not a man with no name. It's always Django.
Yeah,
That's
right.
kind of like that. You know,
It's a titanium. I mean, it is. You know, I mean, it kind of looks like titanium. Titanium in its elemental form is white, so this is silver, like you think of metallic titanium. So I'm okay with that. And titanium is my favorite metal. As dumb as it sounds to have a favorite metal, so I've always liked space titanium for that reason. So that was pretty neat. The prophecy is the kind of the through line of this movie, right? The prophecy ties everything together, and they keep coming back to it. So I kind of like that in that there's no reason for this prophecy to make sense. Like, how did the ancient Okinawans know that aliens from outer space were going to bring a giant robot? But I do like the prophecy and how it, like I said, it really does tie the film together because the aspects keep happening of it and they play out in that way.
Yeah. I honestly tell you is when I started watching this, because again, I hadn't seen this in such a long time. It was like I know I'd seen the movie, but it was like rediscovering this thing for the first time. And I'm like, okay, well, all right, let's see what's going on here. Because I know there's some people don't love this movie and some people really love this movie. And I'm kind of new to this movie, kind of thing. And plus I'm also watching on the Criterion.
Yes.
So it's like super clean, like it's the best version it's ever going to look, kind of thing. So, but yeah, it's as we start building into the story and everything else that goes with it, it's, I mean, again, we know where it's going to go because we know the ending, but it's like, okay, well, I wonder where this would go. So I wonder, people, when they first saw this, right, are we wondering, especially when Ghidra shows up in her vision, I wonder if they were like, oh man, it's going to be Ghidra again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what they were thinking.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Maybe they were trying to throw him off base a little bit. I like also the prophecy because I like when, I mean, the Godzilla series, especially in the Showa era, are science fiction films, Right. They have their fantastical elements, but they're science fiction. So here, introducing a prophecy that comes true adds a sort of supernatural aspect to it.
Sure.
And I like when they mix that little bit of supernatural in there. That there's, it's like they say in there's more in heaven and earth than's imagined in your philosophy, which they famously, of course, put in the American version of King Kong versus Godzilla. Because when I think Shakespeare, I think King Kong versus Godzilla. You have to watch it in the original, the original.
Yes, yeah.
But okay, so Keisuke is joined by archaeologist Seiko Kaneshiro, who translates the prophecy and takes a statue bearing the likeness of Okinawa's guardian monster King Caesar to study. Two men stalk them, with one claiming to be a reporter, while the other attempts to steal the statue but fails and flees. Okay, so introducing Seiko, who is the archaeologist. I love the casual sexism here, as they say, hey, you can't go in there. She's like, oh, it's okay, I'm the archaeologist. Like, what? A girl archaeologist?
Yeah, that stuff wouldn't fly nowadays. Yeah.
In Japan it might still. That's the thing, but no, not in the U.S. We couldn't go with that. And then we get the little statue of King Caesar, which will be our MacGuffin for quite a while, and we get to hear King Caesar's history as the guardian of Okinawa. I am not going to lie, I fully accept the fact that I am an American. Every time I go to a Chinese restaurant or a Japanese restaurant that has a Shisa dog sitting outside, I think of King Caesar, and that if things go down bad at the epic buffet, that King Caesar will be there to help out.
So the thing is, I know they call it where King Caesar gets his name from, obviously from the Japanese, right, kind of thing. But there's another Japanese name for it is Konamin, Komainu. It means lion dog, so they might have another name for it too. So they could have gone with the more Japanese version, but I think calling it King Caesar makes it like, or King Caesar, right, kind of thing, right? That's what.
It's Caesar is a adaptation of a Shisa.
Right, kind of thing. Folks, if you have not guessed, I do not. I'm not great with all the names and stuff. I can tell you stuff that happens, but I'm not great with all the names all the time.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really, I think by doing that, I think this movie kind of changes, instead of being, how to put this, like, we've had like a thing from outer space before. We've had like, something like Rodan came out of the volcano, like all that. Like this is now giving us something more in the line of like Damagen, kind of thing, for the Guardian. And wasn't there supposed to be a film where, like, that's the other one where Godzilla is supposed to be with the Protector? We're supposed to be like Damagen or something like that.
That's right. That was one of the in one,
but it never
one
happened,
or two.
obviously.
No, it never happened. In a couple, I want to say in 2 of the treatments, again for the film that would become Godzilla versus Gigan, there was a Majin that in one of them, it's like the big alien brain used Gigan's jet cutter to cut open the back of this Majin statue to stick himself in to make himself a body, and it was Majin Tuol was his name, and the Majin was going to fight with the hero monsters, and it would have been kind of like Godzilla teaming with Daimajin. So yeah, you're right. I didn't even think of that. This does kind of fit in with the Daimajin, with the Guardian Protector. You know, King Caesar's not as mean as Daimajin is.
No.
But it does really fit with that. And again, that kind of gets in, like I said, with that supernatural aspect. So that, again, it is definitely, especially considering that by the next film, we are way hardcore into science fiction again. Yeah. It does a good job at differentiating itself.
The other thing, too, is for those of you who want to hear Luke and I talk about the original Daimajin, we covered it. God, I don't remember how long.
We covered the third one back in 2020, I think.
Yeah, we covered. That's right. We covered the third. I'm trying to remember when we covered it. It was a while. It seemed like a while ago, but
it's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can definitely see that he's not a nice guy.
No,
like he ain't like, hey kids, let's do this. It's like, hey, sword of death. Like what? So sorry, don't mean to interrupt everything, but yeah, the next movie definitely goes much more into the science fiction aspects of things, which is why I think this one stands out as being different.
Yeah.
Let's be very honest. You've already mentioned how many people are in this movie and Terra Mechagodzilla. And people, I guarantee you, have conflated these two movies into one movie in their heads, But they are very different in the fact that this one is much more about, the idea of it being, again, even though some of the monsters are the same, having the idea that this is dealing with like this guardian. It's very about heritage and tradition and spirituality and whatever that stuff that's there. Is there any of that in Terra Mechagodzilla? I don't think so.
Terra Mechagodzilla is, like I said, it's very much about science fiction because it deals with cyborgism. Right. It deals with the scientific community, specifically, ridiculing Mifune is what drives him to hate mankind, is this ridicule he received as a scientist. Titanosaurus is a dinosaur, a creature of nature, not a creature of myth like King Caesar.
Right. I think that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So if you look at it that way, that totally changes things. I mean, it totally, and we talked about this. I think when we talk about Godzilla versus Smog Monster, right? There were making movies because this is the 70s, right? They had movies that came out that were kind of different. I don't mean as like 180 degrees different like Smog Monster was, but like they had different people making movies. They were not trying to make the same cookie cutter movie every time because they were trying to explore it being a little different, but at the same time, ground it within the same reality of Godzilla's world that, we're here. And you still had to have, your things had to make sense in what's happening. You didn't want to change. You didn't want to make Godzilla go from being, a good guy to being the bad guy to being what, like it's still grounded in that same reality, but not to make the same movie over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
we get to see the Black Mountain when Seiko and Keisuke are on the plane. We see the Black Mountain, so the prophecy has already begun. Which I thought was cool. And the Black Mountain is formed by a giant thunderhead of clouds, but it looks for all the world like a giant black mountain floating in the sky. So that was pretty cool. Yep. And then they are attacked at the professor's. I guess it's his house that they're attacked at. And I just love this fight because the guy for the black hole aliens, little hench guy here, uses the Iron Claw.
He does.
Yep.
Baron von Raschke and the Von Erichs to be proud.
Yes, absolutely. Another little thing it's a kind of a throwaway line on the radio. They say that there has been an earthquake detected with a, wait for it, moving epicenter And we know what that means in a monster movie. That means there's a monster underground. Moving epicenter equals monster. Everybody knows that. All right, so following the appearance of a black cloud resembling a mountain, as we mentioned, Godzilla emerges from Mount Fuji and begins a destructive rampage despite having become tolerant of humans within the past years. Godzilla's ally Anguirus confronts him only to be nearly killed and forced to retreat. All right, so air quotes up to the microphone, Godzilla shows up at the 18-minute, 50-second mark in this movie. So we're about almost 20 minutes in before our titular star shows up, and he just goes and starts destroying stuff. And we've talked about this before on this show that Teruyushi Nakano, he could blow some stuff up. When he had some money, he could make some good effects, but even on a cheap budget, that man could blow some stuff up, and we get some good explosions here in the initial appearance of Godzilla. And the Godzilla suit here, it's the regular Godzilla suit playing fake Godzilla. So spoilers, everybody. Spoilers for a movie from, Cheese and Rice, 45 years ago?
45 years ago,
yeah. So this is fake Godzilla. But it is a bit strange to see. So just to see, Godzilla purposely going out and destroying things, which I don't think we had really seen since Destroy All Monsters, which was a few years ago at this point. It's just, it's part of the story, and they question it in the story. So I thought that was cool. And then fighting with Anguirus, who in the dub is called Angora.
Yeah.
Like a sweater.
Yeah.
Anguirus doesn't do so well in this movie.
So the thing is, the suit that you're talking about, because I was reading this, originally it was just the head from the water prop that was used in 73, but then they attached it to a suit that had metal spots exposed on the arm.
We see that because so in the initial scenes of the fake Godzilla attacking, destroying the buildings, that's the regular Godzilla suit.
Right.
In the scene with Anguirus, it's that one. It's that like hybrid suit, so that they can rip the skin off and you can see the metal beneath.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I figured they weren't tearing up. Obviously, they didn't make a suit to tear it up, and I knew it had to be from something, but I didn't remember that it was the head from the swimming suit then used.
Yeah.
So the one thing I can say is this. Excuse me, as folks who have heard Luke and I speak about Kong versus Godzilla, the new movie, right? Where we kind of thought at first we talked about it'd be great. I mean, would it be cool if Godzilla attacks everything? Man, this could be totally a Mechagodzilla right here, right?
Right.
Like literally it's from this movie. People would have been like, they're ripping off 74, and it's like, I get it, but it works so well because I'm sure when this came out, no one thought that there's going to be that's not Godzilla. It looks just like Godzilla. It's like, see him on the screen, right?
Yeah.
You believe your eyes. And so it works well though. Godzilla going through and doing that stuff, but you're just you start wondering okay, if this is Godzilla, why is he turned? Why, it makes you start questioning things. You want people to not have, to be honest with you, you want people to be interested in your movie, obviously, but you want people to kind of I wonder what's going on. Pique their interest to keep them in the movie. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and they do a good job that here with the prophecy, because they say, I guess Godzilla is the monster that was prophesized, but he is an ally of humanity.
Right.
So even the characters are confused, which I like. I like that because it does play into the mystery angle.
Yeah.
The fight with Anguirus is it's funny because of course the first monster Godzilla fought was Anguirus way back in 1955. But Anguirus does not. He did much better back in Godzilla Raids Again. I mean, he gets just kind of beaten pillar to post. The classic pick 'em up and slam 'em technique, which has appeared in a few movies in a row now, appears here with Anguirus getting thrown around, and then always, of course, it's bad when they grab your jaw and rip it. Try and break your jaw and the blood comes out. That is in a Godzilla movie. That's like you're finished. Stick a fork in you. You're done.
And of course, that's a callback directly to King Kong, which we know King Kong was so influential in getting Godzilla even created, way back in, kind of thing, like the original idea of Godzilla is inspired by, King Kong has its inspirations that inspired by King Kong 33, of course. So, and that being when Kong fights the Allosaurus in 33, he rips the mouth open and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as you mentioned, in that fight, we do get the piece of skin being knocked off by Anguirus and reveals the little chip of metal on his shoulder. So it's like, ooh, what is this now? If only the title hadn't said Mechagodzilla, maybe I'd be,
Right. Maybe I would know. Well, the other thing is too, real quick, because again, obviously, Mecha Kong, right? We make Mechanic Kong, really, technically,
Yes.
right? Which was so popular and so not owned by Toho, so they totally can't use it. I mean, there's no bigger. I say this to Haley all the time. I said, if I made a movie and there's Titanosaurus, Mechanic Kong, Gorosaurus, and the Gargantuas, that's my movie, right? Kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Those are my favorite things. But Mechanic Kong, obviously not being owned, the idea of going to Mechagodzilla, right? I understand why that happened, and I get the idea, like they didn't own whatever, but it just seems so natural that no one even thought about this before.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
see, I always kind of attributed it to the rise of popularity of mecha in Japan in the 70s, because you got to remember, like, Mobile Suit Gundam was, I want to say, the very early 70s, and we had super robots for several years at this point, but Mechagodzilla is not a super robot. He's not like Mazinger Z or Raiden or those types of super robots. He is more like a real robot. He is a piloted machine that has weapons on him. So he kind of fits in with that idea of his Mobile Suit Gundam, kind of outside of what we talk about here on Earth Destruction Directive, but was a hugely influential and popular manga that became an anime. And the idea of real robot mecha, I think, kind of grew naturally out of that hugely popular property. So yeah, it really is. And now you look at it now, it's like, well, of course there's a robot version of him. Of course there is.
Yeah.
So you're right. It definitely was a natural outcropping.
I'm just saying though too, because as well as I do, however people might have felt about King Kong Escapes, the big takeaway from that movie is Mechanic Kong. He is so much bigger than that movie. Even he's bigger than he even has any rights to be from that movie, which is just, but he's so beloved, and so many people, like, even to this day, love Mechanic Kong, and he's literally only ever shown up there.
Right.
And of course, but in all fairness though, folks, Mechagodzilla, in any iteration of Mechagodzilla, no matter which, version 1, version 2, the one, I forgot the name of it, the one has a name, right? Kiru, right? Yeah. No matter what version of even the new one from the new movie, the one in Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Mechagodzilla is a top guy. He is a top heel. He's top of the food chain.
Well, what's great about, and so Mechagodzilla, he's like the number 5, right? You've got the big 4 and then Mechagodzilla, and he's the one that works best as a pivot. Him and Mothra, but Mothra's even more so than Mothra, because he can be the heel or he can be the babyface. Like in the 90s, even though he was fighting Godzilla, Mechagodzilla is sort of the babyface in that movie, because he's the one created by G-Force that's there to fight for humanity, Yeah,
but you're still rooting for Godzilla.
But it's the same. Yes, you are. But it's the same with Kiru. Kiru is, he's created to defend humanity. Yes. So it really depends on what Godzilla's like. Yeah. And the thing about Mechagodzilla is the merchandising. Oh my God, the merchandising. And I always remember this. Everybody loves making like kits and stuff of Mechagodzilla because you don't got to worry about seam lines.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's it's one of the biggest things when you're putting a kit together, whether it's a resin, vinyl, plastic, it doesn't matter. There ain't no seam lines on you can have a hard edge there. Why? Well, that's where the metal meets, kind of thing.
Because he's a robot.
Right. As long as it stays together, you're in good shape, so.
So Keisuke arrives shortly after to check on Masahiko and Miyajima. This scene, just two things I need to mention. First off, the professor's pipe that he has created. Mm-hmm. That that it's very Bondian that this pipe is also a signal scrambler, and I can't imagine that coming into play in the final reel.
No.
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 But I also want to mention his sweater. Wonderful sweater
Yes.
the professor is wearing in this scene because it's the 70s. So
Again, we know that your discussed off-air podcast about sweaters. Yours is on the lookout. So, sweater
mark it
cast coming
down.
soon.
Yeah, sweater cast and check. Okay. Godzilla's rampage continues until, gasp, another Godzilla emerges and battles it. During the fight, the first Godzilla is revealed to be Mechagodzilla, a massive robot armed with advanced weaponry made up of the same strange metal revealed to be space titanium. Godzilla is severely wounded but inflicts some damage on Mechagodzilla before both monsters retreat. Professor Miyajima hypothesizes, based on Mechagodzilla's advanced technology and composition, that the robot is an alien super weapon. So, this scene, fake Godzilla wading through the city, destroying it with his yellow atomic beam.
Yes.
Okay. That and the explosions and the models and all that, this is some just straight up monster on the loose stuff, but this is fantastic. This is so well done on such a small budget that they have. It reminds me kind of in, now this film had a slightly larger budget than Godzilla vs. Megalon, but Godzilla vs. Megalon, most of the footage is, the new footage has them fighting in a field,
Yes.
The one new scene has Megalon destroying the dam. That kind of reminds me of this, where a lot of the film takes place in more rural areas, but this scene of them wading through the city is really well done, and it comes off so nice, especially now restored and on the Criterion box. This looks really good, especially shooting at in air quotes of the mic at night, shooting a dark scene with all the lights and everything. Really good stuff. And then it's right at 26 minutes and 50 seconds. It's Godzilla versus Godzilla as the real G shows up. And then it's on like Donkey Kong at that point.
Yeah. So the thing is, and I know why they didn't do this, but still we can kind of hope, right? To me, once you kind of tell that you kind of see the metal, you're like, what is going on here? Mechagodzilla should just stick his hand straight and blow his fingertips off as he shoots the missiles out of them.
Yeah.
Like, I know it'd be a lot. It would be too much to do with the budget and stuff, and it'd probably be too much like gore for kids. But you'd be like, what are we even looking at? Like, what is he doing? Kind of thing. Like, just keep turning the knob to no, right, kind of thing. Sorry, still Simpson reference.
No,
the thing is that that would be, to me, something different. I mean, I think the main thing is remember, people didn't have these movies at home to watch. You had to see them in the theater. So when Mechagodzilla's, the fake Godzilla's got a different color beam, you might be like, wait, was his beam always that color? But, I thought his beam was this color, that I think is a cool little aspect. We have the luxury now of being able to reference things and have images and all whatever. But back in the day, you didn't have that stuff readily available. No. And if you did, it was probably in a magazine in black and white.
It's in black and white, so you didn't really know anyway.
Yeah.
But the reveal where Godzilla hits Mechagodzilla with the beam, and you see the whole big chunk of metal.
Yeah.
And they just say, "The hell with this," and they burn off the skin.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
It is really cool. I'm not saying that's not cool, but it's just so funny if his finger explodes. What happened to his finger? And a missile hits Godzilla, and he's like, "What the?"
So that this whole sequence, this lays the plot bare. We see, as during this battle, Mechagodzilla is revealed, and we get all I call them the otaku shots, where they show all the different angles of his weapons and such.
Yep.
We get to see the black hole aliens, and Kuronoma. He's a bad guy in a Japanese movie because he has a cigar.
Yeah.
It's that Yakuza thing, right? With smoking a cigar like that.
Right.
We also get the spinny hands of the missiles. That to me is always the show of Mechagodzilla, the spinny hands, that then lock into place to fire the missile. That is, more than anything else, that is the image that has stayed with me since childhood of Mechagodzilla, is the spinny hands. To the point that where with the claw hands that legendary Mechagodzilla has that could spin around, kind of made me think of that too. That had to be.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee you, because there's so many nods in all of the legendary movies. There's so many nods to the past because they understand. I mean, those people making however anyone might feel about the legendary Godzillas and the Kong and all that stuff, those movies are made by people who love making these kind of movies. This isn't just someone doing a cash grab. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
I think all those nods are intentional. I think that's always going to be an intentional nod here and there.
Yeah.
So
the always odd thing about this though is that okay, so fake Godzilla has a breath weapon that he fires out of his mouth. Mechagodzilla instead shoots his eye beams.
Yep.
I never have quite understood that.
Yep. Me either. I don't know.
So, it just is. You know what? It looks cool. That overrules everything.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
Is like it looks good. So you know,
in this fight, we get a beam lock. You know, which is always popular especially in more so in anime, I think. But we get that in Giant Monsters stuff too. It's a beam lock between the eye beams and the atomic breath, and then it explodes, and we see Godzilla fall back into the harbor bleeding. Very kind of backwards, but a few months back I covered Gamera 2 Advent of Legion. Yeah, there's a very similar scene with Gamera and the Queen Legion with a beam lock where the hero monster takes the worst of it. It's a bit more graphic for Gamera than it is here, but I mean that is still pretty bad. I mean, it's all the blood burbling up in the water and all that. I mean, they had started introducing gore in the films, but that's quite a large amount of gore for a Godzilla film. Yeah, and considering how bloodless so many other ones are, right? Like absolutely bloodless. This always strikes me as being, you know, I guess it needs to be there though. It makes sense though, you know, because you have to believe that Godzilla is really hurt. Yes, you know, so. Mechagodzilla also hurt. We get to see Mechagodzilla retreat, which is the first chance we get to see the flying Mechagodzilla puppet. Right. Which is again, it reminds me a lot of like the flying Gigan, right? It's just or really going back to flying Ultraman if you want to go to Subaraya. So, but again, having him be able to fly helps. You know, you can have him leave scenes quickly. You know, that's good. And it also ties into the real robot thing of being able to have the boot jets and fly. You know. Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, think about that. How many, like you were mentioning, in all the anime and the like stuff like that. How many super robots, right? They can fly. That's the thing they can do. Yeah, you know, kind of thing. But you knew he had to be. I mean, he didn't turn into it's not a transformer. You know, he didn't turn into a plane. You know what I'm saying? But it makes perfect sense that he can fly, and that's very influential. You can see that even. I mean, we see that now. I mean, think of how many robots. Well, that robot can fly. Of course he can. Everyone buys it. It's all they fly with boot jets. Yeah, of course. You know, kind absolutely. Of thing. All versions of Mechagodzilla have been able to do that. At least, trying to think. The legendary one doesn't. We don't see him fly, but I think it's implied that he can. You know, but all the Japanese ones can fly. Yeah. Just saying, it's just one of those things that a robot. Like, it doesn't matter who the robot is. It could be on anything. It could be on Futurama or something like that. You're like, and he's just start flying with boot jets. Like, of course. Yeah. But where else would they be? You know, kind of thing. You can put them in the hands. Yeah. How do you eat it? With your hands? Every time we get donuts or a candy bar, I say that to the kids. If they've never seen an episode of Seinfeld, I have no idea. Oh, it's hard. Yeah, so after Mechagodzilla retreats, we go again with the black hole aliens. This is the first of a couple of really well done composite shots. Yeah. Where we have the Mechagodzilla on its gantry, and we see the black hole aliens in front of it. So very nicely composited, and that still looks pretty good even on the Blu-ray. Sometimes those composite shots they don't hold up. That one still looks pretty nice. Yeah, Dad and I find that a lot of times with anytime the Harryhausen, his traveling mats always still look good. Yes. But you get to some movies where you got it's not working. You kind of really see the actors clearly in a different, there and standing in front of like a screen or stuff like that. It just sometimes, I understand. I want the movies as clean as possible so I can see everything. But sometimes being clean doesn't help certain effects. This time they still look good though. So, more power to them. Mm-hmm. So Keisuke and Seiko, they take a cruise ship to take the statue back to the temple, thinking no one will find them on the cruise ship.
Right.
But they are confronted by the thief once again. During the fight, the skin on half of the stranger's face melts away, revealing an ape-like visage. The intruder then attempts to kill Keisuke, but a bullet from an unseen gunman kills him before Keisuke and Seiko catch a brief glimpse of the mysterious reporter. So this is on the Coral Queen. This is a real cruise ship that it was also known as the Queen Coral. So it has gone by both names. And they're really on, and they're really in the dining hall. They're really on the deck. I love anytime you can throw a deck chair at somebody as part of a fight. That is that gets a thumbs up from me. We get there's a whole subplot here where they have two versions of the King Caesar statue, and the alien steals one, and when he's shot, he falls overboard with it. But they have a second one. So okay, I mean, I guess it's like a little false cliffhanger in there. The main takeaway from this is the black hole aliens are revealed, and they're clearly based on Planet of the Apes, but they really look like the apes from Time of the Apes more than Planet of the Apes.
I was waiting for you to say it. I didn't want to be the guy, but so real quick, for those of you who are big Planet of the Apes fans, just like I'm a huge, the original movies, I love them kind of thing, right? Even the new ones that the
Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, the Tim Burton one wasn't great, but like the three new ones are outstanding, right? But they're all CG. Yeah. When you go back to the original Planet of the Apes, the makeup effects done there, there's a documentary called Making Apes, which is outstanding about how they came about doing it, like how the Westmores and all the people like were involved and all this stuff. It's super interesting. And if you enjoy that, if you like Planet of the Apes and stuff, that's worth checking out, called Making Apes. But when that happens and it gets pulled away, I immediately, of course, my mind goes to Time of the Apes because of, it's Japanese. So,
Well, so here's the thing. So the Time of the Apes was the localization of Saru no Gundam, which translates to Army of the Apes. 1974, same year as this film. It started airing in October 1974, so a few months after this was released. But that just speaks to the popularity of Planet of the Apes, that everybody wanted to rip off Planet of the Apes at that point, because Planet of the Apes would come out a few years earlier than this, but really was popular by this point. So the ape aliens of the black hole aliens are featured here. Again, it's a kind of a running fight. This I remember when I was a kid, I never really liked this because I wanted to get back to the story, but now I kind of like it. It has a kind of a James Bond feel mixed with like a Japanese detective show.
Yeah.
Yep. And also has a dummy being thrown off the side of a boat.
Which you love. I know you love that.
Everybody loves a dummy fall.
I mean, it's not Dr. Butcher MD, but what is?
What is Dr. Butcher MD for a dummy fall?
I had to show that one time. I made reference to it, and I was like, well, I'll show you. And I had to find the clip on YouTube just of that. And the kids are like, well, I'm like, just forget the other stuff. Just watch this. And they go, the arm comes off midair. I'm like, it's the best. I go, it hits the ground, explodes. Then it exploded. Sorry,
then it exploded.
Oh
yes. So, but they have the real statue, not the fake statue. Right. Okay. So, concurrently, Godzilla arrives on Monster Island during a thunderstorm and is struck by lightning multiple times, reinvigorating himself. So we got the wounded Godzilla goes and gets struck by lightning a bunch of times, and it's like, so Godzilla's really just trying to be the Japanese King Kong here, then.
Yeah, I mean, that's where they come down to. That's part of me wonders, was this supposed to be Kong? Because I think lightning, and I'm just joking. I know it's not supposed to be Kong.
Now you see, that would be a movie, though. If aliens built a mechanical King Kong and covered him with fur, and then it was King Kong and King Caesar, a bunch of hairy guys all fighting at the end, basically. Right?
The saying is they've never done it.
No.
Book it. Let's go. So.
Oh man. So Masahiko Miyajima and his daughter Ikuku explore the cave where the space titanium was found, but are captured by the ape-like aliens from the third planet of the black hole, who plan to use Mechagodzilla to conquer Earth. Their leader, Kuronoma, forces Miyajima to repair the robot. So when they're heading up to, they're driving into Okinawa to go explore the cave, they pull into the hotel, and Masahiko is driving a Mazda RX-4. And, I tried to figure out what the car was in Vampire Doll in the Gaiden, and I never was able to get a good look at it. This one I managed to find, because of the way that the rear windows are set up, I managed to pull up enough Japanese cars from 1973 and 1974 to find it. So very neat to see a Mazda RX-4. Pretty sure that was not sold here in the United States. I know eventually, famously, the RX-7, of course, was sold here in the U.S. for many years. But very neat to see that. I always, I'm kind of like you. I like watching the period films to see the cars. You get to see some real classics, and it's neat with the Japanese films. Oh yeah, Dad
loves watching. When we watch a movie, he's like, "Look at this! You see that car in the street?" I'm like, "Yes, Dad." Like, to me, they're old 50s cars. He's like, "Oh, that was a this and that was." I'm like, "I'm not a car guy. Yeah. Like, I've never been a car guy. Cars take me from where I got to go to where I got to, where I am to where I got to go." Mm-hmm. Unless you're talking about Bullet or Vanishing Point. Yes, Bullet and Vanishing Point are pretty much it for me. Kind of thing. I'm like, well, it's not the Bullet Mustangs, so or it's not the Challenger from Vanishing Point, but.
Mm-hmm. I think I may have misspoke. I'm ahead of myself on that car. It's the wrong one. That's the car that Keisuke is driving when him and Seiko go. But before we get to that, the black hole aliens have captured Masahiko, the professor, and they're going to scald them to death. That's like their torture method to get the professor to do it. It's like, again, it's very James Bond.
Yeah.
Throw them into the death trap room and everything's really hot. It's full of steam,
It's 74, so Bond's still popular. I mean,
Yeah. Well, we just had 1974. We just had Man with the Golden Gun, so we're still on the upswing, because the next one is Spy Who Loved Me, which was a big hit.
Yeah. I'm just saying, but I mean, you're now into the Roger Moore James Bonds, which were, to be very honest, they are campier than the Sean Connery ones. They're very different. Not to say they're different, they are different. The way that Bond is portrayed is different, because Roger Moore is a very different Bond than Sean Connery.
Right.
But that's what you're getting here. That kind of James Bond, because remember, James Bond was, again, like, it's like Godzilla, King Kong, Ronald McDonald, Santa Claus. They're bigger than their names, kind of thing, and that's what it is. So
right. What's interesting, of course, is that Toho, of course, has a connection with James Bond with the use of Akio Wakabashi and Miyahama in You Only Live Twice, where the two Japanese girls in that movie. While Seiko checks into a hotel and guards the statue, Keisuke leaves to meet Masahiko, only to encounter the reporter, who reveals that his real name is Nanbara and that he is an Interpol agent who has been tracking the aliens. After Nanbara and Keisuke infiltrate the alien base and free the prisoners, Keisuke and Aikiku leave to pick up Seiko and the statue, while Miyajima, Nanbara, and Masahiko stay behind, only to be recaptured by Kuronuma. So, 51 minutes in, we find out that this reporter is an agent of Interpol. I like this. I don't mean to burst this film's bubble. That's not how Interpol works.
Right, exactly.
Interpol is an organization that exists to exchange information and to provide as a liaison and communication and cooperation between police forces. They are not an international police force. They do not have the power to arrest anyone. They do not have special agents. None of that. So
look, all this logic you're applying here just getting in the way of the story. Everyone knows the name Interpol.
Absolutely. It is very much a Japanese concept that it would be an international, not like an international spy. An international police organization is a very Japanese concept.
Yes, very.
It's like we follow the law. Rules of law are very important to us, and we're international and we're cooperating with everyone. But no, that's not how Interpol works. For the purposes of our story, we'll go with it.
Sure.
When they break in to free the prisoners, this is only in the dub, but it's so great. One of the black hole aliens pulls his pistol, his laser pistol, and actually says, "Reach for the sky." And at this point in my life, all I can think of is reach for the sky.
Oh, we could also go back to like Posse, reach for the sky, pop, 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 kind of
Pop,
thing.
pop, yeah.
Yeah.
See, Toy Story just ripping off Posse. Everybody
That's all
knows
it was.
that.
Yeah.
The other one that's good is when they have the aliens have Nambara and all them cornered. He says, "Goodbye, stupid Earthmen."
You're stupid, stupid mind, stupid. You say.
I've had about enough. I'm not having you. So the next morning, a lunar eclipse results in a red moon and a mirage of the sun rising in the west. Seeing this, the team realizes they have to awaken King Caesar. They meet with the priestess and her grandfather and place the statue in the temple, revealing King Caesar's resting place. Okay, so this is where leading up to this, okay, the black hole aliens still trying to kill these people.
Right.
Okay. They conveniently are driving a yellow car so that when they blow up the car with the bomb, it will be the same footage of the car blowing up as it is from Godzilla vs. Gigan.
Yes.
Okay.
Then not, man. That's what
it's like we don't need to blow something else up. We have that already. We have car blowing up at home.
Yeah.
We don't need...
we have car blowing up at home.
And so then they're fighting with the alien. The other Interpol agent shows up and they're fighting with an alien. We get I swear to God, I'm not making this up, an alien arterial spray.
Right. Yeah.
Coming out of this guy at the temple. And it's like, oh my,
oh my. Yeah.
Oh my. So, it's very, very gruesome here. And this leads us into the next part where, the black hole aliens, they launch Mechagodzilla, and then the priestess sings the song. So an hour and 3 minutes into the movie, we get King Caesar. We see him in the mountain and he won't wake up. And Mechagodzilla is fast approaching. So the priestess sings the King Caesar song, which it's probably not as catchy as the Mothra song, but it's pretty good in its own right.
It doesn't get stuck in your head like Mothra. Yeah.
Nothing gets stuck in your head like the Mothra song. So King Caesar, as we said, he's based on a Shisa, or I think it's a yokai type of monster that was the wolf dog, not wolf dog, wasn't it?
Lion dog.
Lion dog. That's it. And so the thing with King Caesar is, he is definitely. He definitely fits in this era of monsters in that he is humanoid and doesn't have anything particularly unusual about his body shape. But he is very animalistic. He reminds me more of like a performance of Kong than of any other Godzilla type of monster because of the way he runs around and how agile he is portrayed as. And of course he has his big ears, which are, used to good effect here and later when he reappears in Final Wars.
Yeah.
Also, I do like this. He has the beam reflect, which that was you mentioned some of the earlier versions of the story that became this film. That was featured in some of the earliest ones. Was that whatever the guardian beast would have the ability to, absorb a beam and then reflect it back. And I do like that. It's so neat. And what's cool about that is, it's very carefully done, and I didn't notice any time that they didn't get this. It always goes in, I think, his left eye and comes out his right.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just a little attention to detail that you didn't really need to do in that, because you get the idea that, he's reflecting it. But I like that it's consistently portrayed.
Yeah. And the thing is too, I'm saying we've seen that used, year down the road. The idea of reflecting back the beams and whatever, it's always been reused and stuff. I think here it works really well because we haven't seen that to this point, have we?
No.
Turning
this
someone's
was the first
own,
time we had really seen it. Yeah.
Right. Turning their own power against them or their own attack against them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Godzilla soon appears, and the two monsters join forces to fight Mechagodzilla, and it is now time for the big finish, because that is what we get here. It is the TB fate. It is the big fight at the end.
Yeah.
When the robot tries to escape, Godzilla uses its stored electricity to create an electromagnetic field to attract Godzilla, before tearing its head off, causing it to explode. Okay, so we now see the full brunt of Mechagodzilla's arsenal on display here. There are weapons that he breaks out in this fight that he had not used in the previous fight. We get to see that he's got a bolt that he shoots from his chest. He fires rockets from his kneecaps. Of course, he fires the missiles from his fingers. He has the beam out of his eyes. He has his force field, which is classic. I love the spinny head force field deal. And it's just absolutely crazy, the amount of explosions and stuff that is in here. And you think, okay, well, it's one evil monster and two heroic monsters. How much of a fight can this be? But Mechagodzilla is still the favor. He's still the favorite here. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
Great line from Kuronuma when he says the classic line, "Beat Godzilla to death." It's like, they're not playing around. You know?
Yeah.
The other classic bit to me in this is, Godzilla and King Caesar have Mechagodzilla surrounded, so he turns his head backwards and fights in two directions at once.
Right. Yes, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
We've never seen that before either.
No, because we hadn't seen a robot like this before in the Godzilla series. That always reminds me of, Captain Kirk says it in Wrath of Khan. Someone's thinking two-dimensionally. Or someone's not thinking three-dimensionally. So he's like, okay, we got him surrounded. It's like, okay, well, I can handle that. I can fight in two directions at once. And he's still coming out on top. He's firing the finger missiles at one side and the I-beams to the other and driving them both back, which I thought was good. That and the I call it the arsenal attack when it's just the shot. It's the otaku shot again of just unloading all the weapons all at once, while Godzilla and King Caesar are just like flopping around trying to get to cover. It's very similar in the way it's blocked out to Megalon, and Megalon does that to Godzilla and Jet Jaguar, where he just keeps firing his weapons over and over again and trapping them. But here, it's just edited together so rapid fire. It's that staccato editing of all the different attacks at once. That's another one. That image, because they use that in Terra Mechagodzilla also. It really sticks with you because it is just so many weapons. There was never any other monster that Godzilla fought that had this many attacks, and let alone use them all at once.
Right, yeah. And the thing is about Mechagodzilla, and I think this is what, it's a robot version of Godzilla. Of course it's going to be popular, but I think this is what makes him so cool, is you've never seen this before. We're like, what? It just makes everything. It makes perfect sense. Like, of course he's got missiles and a laser and a this and of course you can, like, all these things make perfect sense, because sometimes when you put something on you're like, this all makes sense on paper. Then you try it out. It's like, it doesn't really work in real life. This stuff all looks beautiful on the screen and it makes perfect sense in the movie. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it allows Mechagodzilla to be and I know you talk about him being the number 5. The thing is, to me, and I understand that Mothra needs to be, it's Godzilla, Rodan, Ghidorah, Mothra, and King and Mechagodzilla. To me, in the grand scheme of things, and I understand Mothra has her place. I'm not trying to. I know there are Mothra fans out there. Mothra is to me, it's Godzilla, King Ghidorah. It's tough because Rodan is really cool, and I love Rodan, but Mechagodzilla probably comes third in people's minds. You know what I'm saying? Because of how popular he is, because of how cool he's a robot. And I'm not trying to be degrading to Rodan or Mothra, but let's be honest here. Like, Rodan, as great as he is, there are people out there who don't think of him on the same level as like Mechagodzilla, because Mechagodzilla is the bad guy when Godzilla is the good guy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, Rodan is great, and the movie Rodan is outstanding, but Rodan is not the main star of any other film.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, and to be honest,
Mechagodzilla gets several starring returns.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, he's on a level with Godzilla. He's not just the bad guy who shows up at the end. He's there the whole time.
Yeah.
Especially in the 90s, in the
The two Millennium films.
The two Millennium films. I was trying to think, because those 100% he's a main focus of them. So
well, and believe it or not, that is, I agree with you 100%. I mean that part you believe, but I'm saying, believe it or not, there are some people who don't like those two Kiru films because of that, because they are really about Kiru and the relationship of the artificial and the natural and the spiritual world, really the artificial and the spiritual. And they really are. I mean, that I always said that those films, especially the first one, Godzilla X Mechagodzilla, that to me, it's like a manga more than a tokusatsu, the way that the story is told and the idea, the moral question that it asks. That's in Tokyo SOS. The dead must, the living must never touch the souls of the dead. Right. And so he allows you to raise those questions. Here, he's a cyborg from space and he's awesome. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. Mothra and Rodan, they're top guys, but they're mostly heroes. Whereas Mechagodzilla can go either way, but even when he is air quotes up to the microphone, on the side of the angels, he's still the antagonist. It's still Godzilla versus him. And that it's that symmetry that you allowed with having a Godzilla, for whatever he is, created by science, is still part of the natural world, a perversion of the natural world, whereas Mechagodzilla is the artificial. And we've seen that theme plenty of times. We've talked about that here and on other shows about the natural and the artificial worlds and how they can't coexist. But one of the
things is real quick. I just want to say this. Yeah. So thinking about the Millennium films, because those came before Pacific Rim, right? Yeah, they're all before Pacific Rim.
Yes.
Would you, because Pacific Rim, let's be very honest, Pacific Rim has a lot of influences there. You just see them, right? Do you think that version of that the Kiru version of Mechagodzilla influenced kind of some of the ideas maybe that we see in the Pacific Rim universe?
I think so. Because again, both the Kiru and the Heisei version of Mechagodzilla, the line from Pacific Rim, the one that to me explains the entire concept, is to battle monsters. We created monsters of our own,
right?
And that is the Heisei Mechagodzilla, and that is Kiru. It's like when faced with a threat that there's no possible way that any weapon we can make, a conventional weapon we can make, can fight this. Well, we have to face a monster. We'll make one. And that's really what the Jaegers are. That was always the connection between Pacific Rim and the super robot tradition. Was that the robots in a super robot, they were monsters. They were these incredibly powerful things that you could not really comprehend. And that's kind of the way the Jaegers are. So I think that is a really insightful point, that that idea of creating your own monster to defend yourself. And in the case of Kiru, now, they don't really get into this. They get into this a little bit in Pacific Rim Uprising. The idea of, you create a monster, but what if you can't control that monster?
Right.
And that was Kiru, right? That you went past, it was one thing to make a robot. It's another thing to create a cyborg monster. You tampered in the domain that you shouldn't have been, and now you're going to pay the price for your hubris.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely. That's why I think that's one of the great things about cyborgs in general. It lets you ask those questions. Again, Terror Mechagodzilla will get into this as well. With Katsura, it's like, well, are you, how much of you is human? How much of you is machine? Does it matter anymore?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It's all these science fiction-y types of topics that you don't necessarily think of when you're thinking, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, right? It's like, well, there's some moral question here that is worth looking into.
Well, it's to me, it's always kind of funny when someone talks about that kind of stuff and they reference whatever movie they might be referencing or topic, whatever. And I was like, oh, you mean like RoboCop? And like, nothing like RoboCop. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like RoboCop, he's a cyborg who he remembers everything. Like he doesn't become, he's RoboCop for the whole middle 2/3 of the movie. He's Murphy in the beginning and he's Murphy at the end. But he's Murphy at the end who has a lot of metal parts filling in for the stuff that's gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, it's so much deeper. And they're like, well, it can't be. It's a Paul Verhoeven movie. I'm like, look, it ain't Showgirls, but it's definitely, what do you call it? Like, there's stuff there. that's one of the things I think that we question. And I don't know if you've spoken about this here. I know you and I have talked about this. The movie is called Upgrade, and it touches a lot of that idea of what happens when you need machinery to live, because he's paralyzed. Not to ruin anything, it's it in the first 5 seconds. Like, what happens when the machine takes over, and where does the machine end and the person begin, or vice versa? And the movie Ex Machina, I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, talks a lot about, what happens when we make the machine, more human than human, right? Kind of thing, like to quote a Rob Zombie thing, right? What happens when it's no longer just a machine that does a job, but now we're giving it feelings and emotions, and how does it learn? Does it learn from its environment? Does it only learn from its programming? Like, these things have been explored in movies that are air quotes to the mic, like artsy, but yet we're touching on it here in 74. We touch on it again in 93. We touch on it again in all these different places, because that's what Mechagodzilla is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yes, he's an alien killing machine here, but at some point, someone's driving the robot. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, at some point, it's not just a bulldozer. You get on and you go through the dirt pile. At some point, this machine says, no, we're not going through that dirt pile. We're doing this.
Yeah.
And, so anyway.
I mean, that is, you're right. There's a reason why there's so much science fiction that addresses it. When you mentioned Upgrade and Ex Machina, the first one I thought of was Alita Battle Angel.
Exactly.
Battle Angel Alita as a manga. And I liked the movie Alita. I liked the movie version of Alita quite a bit, and I really do hope they do eventually get to make another one. But that deals with the same thing. It's like, are you what makes you human? Is it that you have all human parts, or can a machine also be a human? And can a human no longer be a machine? I mean, again, we're getting pretty far afield. Terminator 2 talks about this to a large degree.
Oh my God, yeah.
In ways that, let me tell you, when I was like 11, I don't know that I was ready to kind of handle some of these moral questions that movie starts raising when you really look at it. Yeah. But before we get, let's finish this up, because that's what this film's done. But it's now, if you want to talk about moral quandary, Godzilla turns himself into an electromagnet.
Yes.
And so he is all bloodied up. All bloodied up. And Mechagodzilla shoots all the missiles off his fingers, and they stick in him, which is a great look. Gets recycled in the credits for the next movie.
Is there any other movie where Godzilla is this bloody?
No.
I don't think he gets bloodier than this in any movie, right?
No, because he's literally covered in blood.
Covered in blood. Yeah. This is a lot of blood for Godzilla. So... he turns himself into an electromagnet and pulls Mechagodzilla out of the sky, which is great.
I'm sorry, it's ridiculous, but it's so awesome.
But it's so cool though. It's like you might be like, okay, this makes no sense, but it's freaking cool, kind of thing. So
I figured, he was created by radiation, and an atomic explosion creates an electromagnetic pulse. Yeah, sure. Why not? He can turn himself into an electromagnet. Okay.
Look, this isn't a Jack Arnold movie. We don't need all that much science, so we're good.
Let's increase this Flash Gordon noise and put more science stuff around. And then he pulls the two electrical towers onto his chest.
Yes,
which is just great. That is so cool. It is so. Yeah. I mean, I've seen a model kit of that. It's like, that is so awesome. Yeah. And then we get the double team where King Caesar rams King rams Mechagodzilla over and over again. Yeah. And they twist his head off, and it pops off, which is great, because that's what you do with a robot, right? You either give it a logical problem till it blows up, or you tear its head off.
Yeah. Well, they can't break its jaw open and let him bleed out like Anguirus.
Can't break its jaw open.
So
with Mechagodzilla defeated, the mortified aliens are distracted. Nambara and the others free themselves using the pipe.
Yeah,
kill their captors and sabotage the base, fleeing it as it explodes. With the enemy defeated, Godzilla heads out to sea, and King Caesar returns to his resting place while the humans rejoice. So they tear Mechagodzilla's head off. Then he explodes with the pieces of metal raining everywhere, which will be a plot point in the next film.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And then we got to kill the aliens off. So time to kill some more aliens in gruesome ways. They're aliens. We can have blood spraying out. It's not red. It's green.
Yeah.
What difference is
Right.
it?
Well, that's how. For those of you who are fans of horror movies, in Search of Darkness, part 2, where they talk about that. I think, or one of the In Search of Darkness, they talk about how like the rating boards were going crazy, so they just said make the blood green, make the blood black. I think it's in 1, and they talk about the idea that, like, rating boards couldn't have blood everywhere, but if it's black blood or green blood, go for it, cover the screen in it, and it's like, okay, because it's not blood, so.
I'm reminded of this kind of a different context when Batman, the animated series, was first airing on Fox.
100%.
There were certain things broadcast standards and practice absolutely would not let them do. But in a very early episode, there is a character named Captain Clown, who is a giant robot employed by the Joker. And Batman beats it about the face with a crowbar. Yeah. And you read the article and they talk about, we did this assuming they were going to tell us to tone it down. And they said, no, it's a robot. You can do whatever you want.
Right. Well, that's also why there's no guns on Batman. There are lasers.
Well, that's why if they were guns, they were Tommy guns.
Right. Oh,
yes. That'd be old-fashioned type guns. There were
what was the gun? What was the show where there was no guns? There's only lasers.
That was Spider-Man.
Oh, and
Spider-Man. And Spider-Man.
Yes, and Spider-Man. Yes, you're right. Yeah. No one has guns. They have lasers. G.I. Joe's all lasers. But I'm just saying, But yeah.
Well, that's the shirt. Like, knowing is half the battle. The other half is red lasers and blue lasers, right? So.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But from there they said, well, if we can do that. They had like the whole 2-parter with Hardak was basically about how much damage can we do to people that are they're robots. It's okay,
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
When we throw Harvey Dent off a roof into the bat symbol, it's okay. He's a robot. It's no problem. When we crush that woman with an elevator, no problem. She's a robot. So the aliens all get killed. They blow the base up, and everybody's happy. And then King Caesar goes back in his hill and goes back to sleep. Not to be disturbed until the 2000s when he reappeared in Godzilla Final Wars.
Yeah, when everybody came back for her. Even Zilla made an appearance. Speaking of Zilla, I have a funny thing I found here.
Okay.
So the only Japanese Godzilla movie that was released in Hungary was this movie. And it wasn't released until 1989 and a very short run in the cinema, but was met with very unfavorable reception, where critics called it utterly worthless film and one of the worst science fiction movies in history. It was so badly received that no other Japanese Godzilla film was ever released thereafter, neither theatrically nor on home video or on television. As a result, most people believe that Roland Emmerich's American Godzilla from 1998 was the first and only true Godzilla film. I saw that and I go, oh my God, I have to bring that to the show.
Oh my God.
Think about that. Godzilla, Santa Claus, King Kong, like, he's bigger than life. He's Superman. He's bigger than anything. In Hungary, was it Hungary? I said, right?
Yes.
Was it in Hungary? No Godzilla here. Thank you. We only want Godzilla. We're good. Are you kidding? So I just thought that was hysterical. Wow. I wanted to make sure I throw it out there. I'd never heard that before. So
I don't think I have any. I'm not sure if I have any Hungarian listeners, but if I do, please.
I would love to hear from you.
Yes.
It's just so funny if you had somebody from Hungary who's listening to you, who's discovering that all these movies exist now, and they're just like, "What? My whole youth, I wasted it."
there's some young man in Budapest who's like, "What? There's a whole series of these?"
Yeah. So, but I mean, the thing is, folks. Excuse me. As Luke said, a lot of stuff here ties right into Terra Mechagodzilla, which to me is the movie that I remember much more. I've seen it way more times. It has Titanosaurus, one of my favorite Godzilla monsters of all time, maybe my favorite, next to Mechanicon, right? Mechanicon versus Titanosaurus in a movie would be like ultimate. But what we get here is, and this is what we were talking about before, this movie's so much different because it deals more with spiritual than any other of the films did, and it's not so science fiction-y. It has science fiction, but not as much. But it also ties in Planet of the Apes. It ties in like so many different things. And I think because this movie was, I don't want to say lost, but harder to find for a while, I think it has a different feeling in people. Like people don't feel the same way about it as you would. I don't know, like one of the ones that was on TV literally all the time.
Right.
You know, I think,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. Even today, of all of the Showa films, this may be the one I have watched the least amount of times in my life. You know, just because it was not readily available. It was not on TV. I didn't have it. You know, it wasn't always available on VHS. And, you know, compared to the other ones that were just more commonly seen. I mean, how many times have you or I seen King Kong versus Godzilla?
Oh my God.
It's in the triple digits.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
it's like,
put it this way, my daughter has seen that movie like at least a dozen times.
yeah,
Right. And she's not even a dozen years old.
right.
I'll just say it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I mean, I agree. I said this time, of all the viewings I've watched, even the last time I watched it for the podcast, I think I enjoyed the film more this time.
Sure.
I think, again, just as I've gotten older, I've appreciated some of the structure and some of the direction, especially from Jun Fukuda, who I never really liked his films as much as Honda's films, but I've come to really enjoy Fukuda's films. And in fact, this is the last one we'll cover, but his films from the 70s, you know, I really enjoyed all four of them. They are so, I was down on them for so long, but I enjoyed all of them. And actually, it's kind of funny. I've gotten to cover all four of those with guests now that I think of it, because you and I did Smog Monster.
Yeah.
And then Nathan Marchand and I did Gigan. And then Joe Butler and I did Megalon. And now here we are with Mechagodzilla. And it's like Fukuda, for a guy that, you know, he always said he never thought there should be any sequels to the original Godzilla. And for the way that his films were always kind of looked down upon because he wasn't Ishiro Honda, I think they hold up pretty well. And looking at them back now, you can kind of see what they were going for. You can understand the limitations that they're facing. But, you know, this film, it's creative. It moves along well. It introduces some really cool concepts with both Mechagodzilla and King Caesar. I think it uses the Okinawa region and setting well. And it even taps into, like you said, not only the more supernatural stuff, it taps into like some, you know, international espionage, some James Bond type stuff with the fight on the cruise ship and the Interpol agents. So it's certainly not lacking for ideas. I'll give it that. You know, it's not like Megalon where like halfway through they're like, yeah, and then they fight for another 30 minutes, you know? Yeah. There's a bit more story going on here. And I think it's to the betterment of the film. I think you know, Megalon. If we can agree that Megalon was clearly the low point of the series, this by definition is an upturn. But I think it's definitely you know, a more of a return to form as far as the level of quality, if nothing else.
So think about this. Like he introduces Mechagodzilla, which is, again, we've already established in the top 5. No matter how you select it, he's top 5. To me, top 3, right? Did he introduce Gigan also?
Yes, he did.
So the two, because I know some people don't love Gigan or whatever kind of thing. I remember you loving Gigan as a kid because he's got hooks for hand and a chainsaw on his chest. It's cool, right? What's
not to like here?
Right, it's just so cool. Those two monsters are iconic in the God. And again, not to say they're, but let's call a spade a spade. Hedra is different. It's a very different kind of monster, but like Gigan, like he's come back in different forms. Like we had him later on. Like he's kind of, look at him, you're like, what's this guy? He's cool. Like you don't have to even know Godzilla to be like, look at this guy, he's cool. Mechagodzilla, like look at this guy. They're so cool. To be the guy who brought these really cool robot cyborg creatures, you know, outer space monsters into existence through your film, there's got to be credit there. I know people didn't want to give him credit, but the one thing I can say is this. If you look at his 4 movies, and we've seen 3 of them much more than we've seen this one.
Yeah.
Those were on TV. I remember watching them as a kid all the time.
Yeah. Ibra a lot was on TV a lot. I mean, Godzilla vs. Sea Monster, very common.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I misspoke a minute ago. Obviously, Yoshimitsu Banno, of course, directed Smog Monster, not Jun Fukuda. I misspoke there.
Right. But you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like, but if you look at like iconic creatures, you know, even Hedra as, you know, as a really cool creature and a really cool design, but Banno's whole thing, we talked about this on the episode when we did, his thing was he was pushing what even went into the movie, what the themes were. Like he was really pushing everything,
Yeah.
which I know did not sit well with some people, but it's so true. When you look at Hedra, it's such a different kind of film. The movies that we have here for Fukudo, these movies are, I don't want to say they're more kind of like, I hate to use this term. They're kind of like pop music. They're more kind of mainstreamish kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
right.
they are definitely movies that introduce important characters that as a kid, you could be like, this is cool. And as an adult, you can say, wow, there's some good story here. This makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Because the other one, of course, is he directed Son of Godzilla. So he helped introduce Minya. You know, whether you like or dislike Minya, important character in the Godzilla mythos.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, it's like I say this all the time about Son of Godzilla. That movie has no right to be as good as it is.
Yeah.
You know,
no, it
just
doesn't.
like, you know, and Kuwamanga and the Kamakuras have no right to be as worked as well as they do, but they do.
Exactly.
You know, so. Yeah. But here, so like I said, I enjoyed watching this one again, and I do want to watch this one with the kids. I think they'll definitely get a kick out of it, especially the whole reveal, you know, the reveal of Mechagodzilla, the fake Godzilla, and all that. So, hard to believe that this is just 1 year away from the end of the Showa period for Godzilla. We are getting right near the end here.
Yeah,
and it's hard to believe there's just, you know, it runs such a gamut. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the other thing too is about Godzilla movies, and this is, I think, what people kind of, because again, being so removed from them now, I mean, we're talking 40, 45, 50, almost 50 years from some of these movies, is that because we look at movies now like, well, of course they're making a sequel. Of course they're making a sequel. It wasn't guaranteed to get sequels to things or to another installment or another whatever. I think now, because every movie wants to be a franchise, like franchises become such a big thing. But Godzilla's and stuff, I mean, James Bond was a franchise. Godzilla's were a franchise. Like by 74, we don't have all the Planet of the Apes movies. We don't have Star Wars. We don't have, like, you know what I'm saying? It was such a foreign concept at the time. Yeah. The idea of the franchise didn't really explode as much as it did until later. Yeah. You know?
And you had series of films like back in the Hollywood studio era.
Yeah.
You know, this Basil Rathbone playing Sherlock Holmes over and over again.
Right.
You know, that wasn't necessarily like we think of it now, where like, oh, that's a big moneymaker. The studios liked them because they were steady moneymakers. Yeah. But Godzilla, I mean, he was the top draw for Toho. And Toho, again, lest we forget, I think at the time still the largest movie studio in Japan.
Yes.
So it's like, you know, this was their A pictures usually. So
think about this though. Like when Hammer started making Horror Dracula and Curse of Frankenstein, no one thought about making, like, there's going to be all these sequels coming to them.
Yeah.
The Dracula movies, some of them, like, well, you get to Scars, which wasn't even supposed to be a Dracula movie, and then you get to 72 and Satanic Rites, which are kind of like weird at the end. But like the Dracula, if Horror of Dracula did not literally reinvigorate the entire horror movement, you don't get sequels. And this is the key with Frankenstein. And I think people who don't think about it this way. To me, when you think of, like, and I don't mean to get us a far afield here, but you'll see what I'm saying in a second. Peter Cushing as Baron Frankenstein, right? He's the tying link between them. He makes a monster, it doesn't work. I'll make a new monster. I'll make a new one. He's always trying to up his game. He's the tie together in those, but it's a human being, again, as crazy as some of those movies get with the Frankensteins, right? It's that character going through. Godzilla, from the original Gojira to what we get even here, is not the same. It's not the same monster,
right?
So to speak. Godzilla, the Gojira, the original Gojira, to me is a standalone movie. It is its own movie. It does not exist. I know it exists. I get it. But it doesn't really exist in this world. Right. The Godzilla we get in Gigan, in Megalon, in Mechagodzilla, and Terra Mecha, that Godzilla is totally different.
Right.
But that Godzilla is even different than the Godzilla we get in 85 and Biollante and, you know, all those other movies. It's closer, but it's not the same guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
it's there. There's that permanence. There are certain character traits that we associate with them, so that are always there. So we can take the character and put them in different settings, and they
Sure.
work. I always
Right.
kind of liken it to there was a pair of Tarzan movies in the '60s that were made Tarzan into like a secret agent. I don't know if you're
Oh.
familiar with those.
I am not.
I'm
I'm very Johnny
blanking on the
Weissmuller.
name.
I'm very
But-
Johnny Weissmuller, Tarzan, just to be honest with you.
Let's see.
So,
Tarzan secret agent. Let's see if I can just do a quick search here and if I can
Yeah.
find them. But so there were these two films where it was like Tarzan's kind of like an international agent type of thing, and it was totally different from the from what we Johnny Weissmuller and all those. Let's see, Tarzan movies 1960s. That might do it. To identify that this character, but it's like Tarzan's still identifiable.
right.
Still recognized as Tarzan, still makes sense, but it's just in a different context. And it's the same. We can do this with Frankenstein, with Dracula, Godzilla,
Right.
King Kong, all those guys. So that speaks to the strength of the character and the permanence of the character and why it worked so well to take Godzilla in different directions. And if you really want to get technical, you can always say, well, the Godzilla from 1954 died from the oxygen destroyer. And then a second Godzilla showed up a year later, and we've been following him.
Right. No, and I get that. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that. But when you look at the movies, just in general, you look at a movie like the original Gojira. The original Gojira is so much a standalone. It's like Kong 33. It is its own standalone movie. It is not, which is so different than the than the like we got with Skull Island. And with Godzilla, and then King of the Monsters, and then those things like that. When you look at those are so much designed to be living in this world. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Whereas these series of movies don't really, I don't know, like they stand together, but they clearly don't have to be the exact same thing. It's not like 50. It's not like the original happened and it's that same thing. It's totally a different kind of creature. So.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, I did find it, just to close the loop on that. Yeah, the first one I was thinking of is Tarzan and the Valley of Gold.
Yep, I just found it. And
from 1966, and it is starring Mike Henry, and that poster I always remember with Tarzan whipping the grenade around,
Yes,
and he's going to throw him up at the helicopter. So there was a couple of these films that they made that were very much a James Bond sort of take on Tarzan, though. There's no reason that you can't put that character in a different
I will
setting.
say this right now. I have 100% never seen these.
Yeah.
The poster I've seen, I have never seen this. Holy smokes. Mike Henry's in good shape.
It's Tarzan, the Valley of Gold, Tarzan, the Great River, and Tarzan and the Jungle Boy are the three modern ones that take place in the 60s. And then from there's a big gap. They don't make another Tarzan movie till Tarzan the Ape Man with Miles O'Keefe.
Well,
He of Ator fame.
Yes. So anyway,
all right.
But folks, as Lucas said, if you have not watched this movie in a while and you have the Criterion set, because I'm assuming you're going to talk about that in a minute, right, to get the kind of thing. I would suggest watching it through the Criterion set. Now, you're saying to me, Jay, I don't own this. It's on HBO Max. At least it was.
Yeah. No, it still is. I checked it right before we started recording. So yeah, if you want to see this movie, you either go get that Criterion collection, the full Showa era Godzilla collection. It has available both the Japanese language and international English audio dub, if you prefer. So you can do that. And it is, if you don't have that box, it is available to stream on HBO Max. And I believe it's only the dub that's available on HBO Max.
Yes.
But the dub it's not the Cinema Shares one. It's not the edited one. It is the uncut international dub one. So it is the full movie. It has all the gore and all that in there. So you're good on that front. But yeah, I mean, give it a shot. Like I said, I was down in this film for a long time. I was like, well, Terra Mechagodzilla is the real one. And in all honesty, I still probably like Terra Mechagodzilla better. I think Terra Mechagodzilla is just a freight train. Once it starts, it just goes and does not stop. Whereas this one has a bit more, a few more scenes of people getting captured and escaping and such. But I still really like this, and I think if you haven't seen it in a while, you got a really great version out there available to watch. Give it a watch and see, maybe if you're already a fan, by all means, definitely check out that Criterion's version of it, because the film will never look better than that at this point. I just don't think the elements exist to make it look any better, But that is the only place you can get it unless you want to find the
Criterion spent a lot of time. So the Criterion set, which is the Showa era films, they spent a lot of time on those. They wasn't like this is something they slapdash together and rushed out, which I know some people were worried about, like, oh, they're going to do it. The thing goes for about right now, like right on Amazon right now, about $112 for the entire set. You're like, that's so much. It covers from 1954 to 1975. I mean, it's just, this isn't some slapdash together thing. So
it's a lot of movies,
It's all the movies, and it's the book, and it's everything else. It's just, and let's be honest, they are the artwork in the book and stuff like that is just killer stuff.
Oh,
and, to me, well worth the time and effort to look at it. And when you look at this stuff, you can say, man, okay, I can appreciate this, or I can look at this. Like I'm looking right now at the artwork they show for Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla with King Caesar behind him, whatever. It's just amazing looking. So I can't I know Luke recommended. I can vouch for it as well as someone who is not nearly as big a Godzilla fan as you are, Luke. I love this thing. I mean, it was a when it came out, it was like no brainer buying it. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
I mean, just to get all of them on Blu-ray, especially the ones that were basically impossible to find here in the U.S. at that point, no question. Yeah, no question about it. So I'll throw it out there to you, the listener. What do you think of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 74? Do you fall on this side of the fence, or do you prefer Terror, or do you prefer one of the other Mechagodzillas? Write in, let us know. Earth Destruction Directive at yahoo.com. Love to hear from you. We'll talk about it here on the show. Jay, I've got to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking Mechagodzilla with me today. Why don't you let all the good folks out there in Radio Land know where else they can find you?
Sure, sounds great. So, folks, anywhere you found Earth Destruction Directive, you can find my podcast, Bots, Bugs, and Babes, the B-Movie Podcast, where Luke has been on there several times, and it's our dad and I. That's who we normally are hosting together the show, where we talk about B movies, and that's an all ages show, just like Earth Destruction Directive. So it's totally fine for the family. If you want to hear Luke and I together, we co-host along with Chris Tyler, the hair metal hero, and Two True Freaks OG Chris Honeywell on the Vault of Starling Monster Horror Tales of Terror, where we cover horror movies. And also you can find Luke and myself with the hair metal hero, Chris Tyler, as we talk about Get Back to the Wrestling. Finally, there's a show on the internet about professional wrestling, and where we talk about, obviously, professional wrestling. Just to let you know, on Get Back to the Wrestling and the Vault of Starling Monster Horror Tales of Terror, there is some colorful, salty language that might be used here and there by me and by others, but mostly me, because those are not all ages. So if you're interested in all ages stuff, check out Bots, Bugs, and Babes, where we talk about all kinds of stuff. And that is very adjacent sometimes to what we talk about here on Earth Destruction Directive, right? So.
Yeah, it was so adjacent. We did a April Fool's Day where we switched. I don't think anybody noticed.
No one even noticed. That's the killer part. The worst part is Dad and I doing it, and Dad's like, "Wait, what's the taglines and stuff?" I'm like, "I got the taglines, Dad. We're good." Because he was worried he was going to mess it up. I'm like, "It's not hard, Dad. They're all ages shows. You just don't swear. It's like we normally do."
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yes, please check those out. Bots, Bugs, and Babes, a lot of fun. We cover Jay and I have covered a lot of. We've had some variety this year on the show, for sure. We got more variety coming down the pipe. So please check that out. And again, I want to take an opportunity to thank everyone for downloading and listening to Earth Destruction Directive. Hope you enjoyed our show. Just a quick reminder that Earth Destruction Directive, as my brother said, is for everyone. If you find joy in Japanese giant monsters and daikaiju and anything that we talk about here, you are welcome to interact with the show on any level that you feel comfortable. All are welcome at Earth Destruction Directive. So that is all we've got today. As I said, I'll throw it out to y'all in the listeners, in the listening audience. Earth Destruction Directive at yahoo.com, or hit me up on Twitter or Facebook. All the information is in the outro to the show. Be sure to check out the show on YouTube. Just search for, wait for it, Earth Destruction Directive on YouTube, and you can find the show there. And I'd love to hear from you. Now, the last time I had a guest on, I said it was Joe Butler. I said, Joe, should we tell the audience what's coming next? And he said, no, let them stew. And I said, all right, so we're going to do exactly that. We're going to let everybody stew as to what the next episode will be. I will say that I am trying to get a guest on for that one, so it won't be just me that you hear, hopefully. But as for what we're covering, I think we're going to let that be a surprise. Jay, any last thoughts before we sign off?
I just want to thank you for having me on. I love talking Godzilla movies. I don't get to do as much talking about Godzilla movies as I would like to sometimes, because it just doesn't come up in my everyday, job. So
no, it doesn't. Mine either. It's really kind of disappointing. But Jay, as always, you're welcome to join us, and always appreciate having you on. The person who's watched more Godzilla movies with me than anyone else in my life. So again, thank you everyone for downloading and listening. Please come back next time, and until then, keep 'em stomping. This has been Earth Destruction Directive, a Daikaiju podcast, produced and created by me, Luke Giaconetti, as part of the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Network, available at twotruefreaks.com. This is a fan work celebrating the history and culture of Japanese giant monsters. All movies, TV shows, comic books, characters, and other intellectual property is copyright their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended or implied. If you would like to send an email to the show, you can email me at earthdestructiondirective@yahoo.com. I try to respond to all emails, and if you send in some comments, I will read them on the show. All episodes of Earth Destruction Directive can be found at twotruefreaks.com. You can also find the show on your favorite podcatcher. Just search for Earth Destruction Directive. You can even leave a review on your podcatcher of choice if you'd like. You can find me on Facebook. Just search for first name Luke, last name EDD. You can also get in touch with me on Twitter. Just search for the handle @LJacone. That's LJACONE. The theme song for this podcast is Future Gladiator by Kevin MacLeod, downloaded from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thanks for listening, and be sure to come back next time for more city-stomping fun here on Earth Destruction Directive. Tune in next time to hear the crusty old podcaster from Oklahoma say,
"There's a WTF moment if I ever saw one."